Today we've got an interesting class in store. We're going to be talking about how to discover our special purpose, our special contribution to the planet. God does not create two people alike. Everyone is different. You can take two identical twins and they got a totally different task in their lives. They've got a totally different thing that they are here to contribute. What is it you're supposed to contribute? What's your special gift to this planet? You really have to get that thing wired. What is your contribution? Because, in life there's something that people can blur sometimes, especially in the Jewish world, is it's true you have to be an amazing Jew to be Jewish. Yeah, you got to be an amazing Jew. Got to say Amen at the right times. You got to say Baruch Hashem instead of telling people how you're actually doing. And you have to say Chas v'Shalom at least like 20 times a day. You have to say Chas v'Shalom. Okay, you got to be really an amazing Jew. So the next is to be Jewish. Okay, Jewish, because God didn't just make you Jewish; He made you Jewish, and you have unique things to offer this world that may have nothing to do with Judaism. Like you may be like what's your name? Jordan, you may be like the holiest Jew on earth. Like, oh my gosh, just hearing you make brachas in the morning could like blow someone away. Yeah, but meanwhile, your special task is, I don't know, saving dolphins from tuna companies or something like that. You understand? So your contribution could be something totally different. It could be totally the same. I've put mine together. My special contribution, I've worked it kind of in a way that it works with my Jewish. So my Jewish is I'm a Hasidic Jew who, wears a tallis and goes like this underneath the tallis, and I do all that stuff. I try to do it as best as I can and as intensely as I can always. And I've got a Jewish thing going on. My particular contribution is to create connection amongst people, whether it's connecting yourself to others or to God, but it's all about connection. That's my contribution to the planet. And I'm thank God, so I've heard, I'm pretty darn good at that, helping people connect. Okay, so that's my specialty. So there's Jewish and there's Jewish, and you have to get this, that every person is born with a hook in their mouth, okay? Every person is born with a hook in their mouth. What does it mean you're born with a hook in your mouth? What it means is when God throws you into the pond, i.e. when your soul comes into the fetus on the 40th day, till the 40th day the fetus doesn't have a soul, but on that 40th day the soul comes down to that body, but it also comes with a hook in the mouth, and then it goes out into the ocean. When it's born, it's out there into the ocean. But we all get reeled in, don't we? At the end of life, you can run, you can hide. You can run, but you can't hide. You're going to get reeled in at the end of your life. And I think that's what's kind of makes everyone think twice about things they do in life, is that I am going to get reeled in. I want to take it easy a little bit and make sure I don't get into too many troubles, man. I don't want to get into too many, because you are going to get reeled in, and they're going to do a full synopsis, MRI breakdown of every last morsel of lobster you might have eaten as a Jew. So so what happens is when you get to upstairs, when God reels you in, so there are a few questions that are asked, whether God asks them or it's your highest self asking, but there is a bit of a tribunal. It ain't so pretty. And but one of the questions that's asked is, were you Jewish? And there's also the question of, were you Jewish? So you could be like the most Jewish person in the world and have totally ignored the Jewish and just did the full Jewish thing. You got a tattoo that says mom on it. You got, special body piercings that no one would have even thought of. You've got and you were the chairman of the board of help cats find a home, and you did all these amazing things in your life. You were the most Jewish you could possibly be. In fact, you always were good at whistling, and somehow you developed a microphone that picks up whistling without the sound of the wind blowing. I mean, you pushed the envelope. in how Jewish you could be. But unfortunately, your name happened to be, Sarah Goldstein or Josh, Josh Stein, and you get upstairs and you're like, Mr. Jewish, and you get upstairs, God reels you in, and he's like, so, were you Jewish? And you're like, I was so me-ish. I mean, I was totally me, and God's like, good job. Were you Jewish? And Sarah or Josh is like, what's that? When you're born Jewish, man. I mean, you didn't know that? Well, I knew that, Well, what'd you do? And, well, I went to shul on Rosh Hashanah. I mean, that's pretty good. And they're like, check. Very good, very good. What else do you do? Well, I'm not sure. Not sure. I didn't know so much about it, altogether. So what does God do? He pulls the hook out of your mouth. And where does he throw you? Right back into the pond. Wah, wah, wah. Sounds scary, right? You don't want to lived a whole life only to get thrown right back right after your life. You don't want to wind up back in the pond so quickly. Usually people get to hang out with God for like hundreds of years before they have to come back to the pond. You don't want to be down here. I mean, this is like divorce. Don't you realize how divorced you are right now? You even think you're you. Meaning you're so far gone from the reality that all there really is God, that you actually think you exist separate from God. Talk about exile. We're all in this impersonal exile right now. We're all, whatever, we have to deal with that. But the opposite's also true, so if you think I'm just giving you guys a hard time, I'm not. Because if someone gets upstairs and they had their tefillin on, or they did their mitzvahs, they dotted their I's, they crossed their T's, they were the best Jew they could possibly be. In fact, they never told anyone how they were feeling. They always just said, Baruch Hashem. Yeah, and they said Chas Shalom 20 times a day, and they would say Mirz Hashem every time they were going to go do something, which means with God's will, and they would say Be'ezras Hashem every time they said they were going to get something done, but of course weren't. And they did everything right. They said Amen at the right times. They bowed at the right times. They stood and sat at the right times. Jewish. He did it. Check. Yeah? And then God asks that same individual, so Yankele, were you Jewish? And Yankel is like, what do you mean? He says, did you express your individuality? Did you make that special contribution I sent you to earth for? What do you think I need amen? I'm infinite. I have everything. Like I have whatever is possible I have. I didn't need the amens. But I did need you to do certain things downstairs that were unique to you. Certain contributions that are special to you. That I needed. Did you say did you do that contribution? And Yankel is like, no one told me nothing about no contribution. And at that point, God pulls the hook out of his mouth, and guess what he does with him? Back into the pond. Wah, wah, wah. And he has to start his life all over again to figure out how to live his contribution. Are we clear? So you got to get them both done, and you got to get them done intensely, 100% each. See, there's this other approach that people have had. They call it like more modern Orthodox, where you're like Jewish and Jewish, yeah? So you could be like a doctor, or a lawyer, or a musician, or whatever, and you're also Jewish. But unfortunately, when people try that kind of thing, they always wind up a lot more modern than Orthodox, okay? So what we want to do here is a different kind of thing. It looks like you do half and half, but you actually do this 100%, and you do this 100%. Okay? 100%, 100%. Is that possible? The answer is yes, it is possible. Not only is it possible, you must do them both. Totally intense. You got to be the most intense Jew you can be, and you have to be the most intense you can be, all the way with everything. And anything less than that, you blew your incarnation. You have to do them both totally intense. I once saw a book from a particular yeshiva, I'll leave nameless, that was bragging about it's students that came in from all different walks of life. One was a movie producer, one was in finance, they were all big, they used 10 stories, 10 students, each one who had been the top of his field, and how they got them to learn Torah, become observant Jews. And each story ended, and he now lives in Bnei Brak with 12 kids and learns 14 hours a day. Now, I don't know if you guys saw the movie Fight Club, but I was going to go find these guys. I was going to hunt down all 10 of these guys and just put a gun to their head and just say, like, if I don't find you writing screenplays that bring God into this planet in a greater way because of the skills that God gave you, in 1 month, I'm going to come blow you away, buddy. Mr. Torah Scholar. Yeah. I'll do it. The point is that the reason, whatever you've attained and achieved in your development as an individual, you have to live it, you have to work it, you have to do it. And your Judaism, you got to do 100%.
Why is it a Venn?
What?
Why is it a Venn diagram?
Oh, just because we had spoken about, mostly because the Jewish guys often think that that's all they need to do. So they think that is taking care of the Jewish, even though they never did the Jewish stuff. I once taught this class. I wouldn't normally put it in a Venn diagram, but I taught the class once, and there was this Chassid from England who got so angry with me. He was so angry. How dare I tell him that he's not, how dare I tell him that he hasn't, like, totally finished the job.
But really you mean for it to be one circle?
Ideally, yeah. I set it up because this guy got so angry. How dare I tell him? So I want us all to see clearly that it's not enough. And how many Jews out there think because they sit chairman on the board of some Jewish organization that they're done with the Jewish part? So like, yeah, he ran this company and they really changed the world and he used his charity for all kinds of great purposes that are his special contribution. And because he sat on the chairman of the board of the federation, he's totally off the hook for Jewish. You understand? That's why it's a Venn diagram, because he's here. He thinks he's here when in fact he's really here, and he's dabbled in here a bit, but he really needs to. His dietary laws. I don't care how rich and secular the guy is. His dietary laws are no different than mine as Jews. We both have the same charge of the Torah. Jordan.
Okay, so what if hypothetically God puts you on earth, but what your purposes contradicts being Orthodox? So what if God...
Excellent question. I would tell anyone who has, if they have an occupation that's directly in conflict with Jewish law, yeah, then they should shift it. They should shift their occupation. So if, for example, we have a couple rabbis here whose family is pork sales. Yeah, their family's in porks, like major pork producers. Yeah, so they came. They're all in the business, family business. They're all executive level family business. So they came to Aisha Torah, started learning Torah, and became observant and realized, you know what, this just doesn't work. You can't be in pork sales. Now the truth is there are ways to deal with it, but they got out of it. Now, they had a brother who didn't become observant. He stayed in it, and the brothers that did become observant went and did other things with their lives. There's all kinds of examples. What do you do if you own a company that's open on Shabbos? And what do you do if you own a restaurant and it's open on Shabbos? And who knew? And later you find out you can't be making money on Shabbos. So what do you do then? So there's ways to deal with it. You want to hear the way to deal with it? You take on a partner who's a Gentile, and you write the contract that the revenues of Shabbos go to him. Yeah?
But who's to say, though, when you were talking about shifting,
yeah,
who's to say you shouldn't shift your Judaism?
So in general, what you'll notice is everyone who's in this room right now is approaching this 3,326-year tradition with great humility. We're saying, like, we are coming from the Western civilization whose public opinions change every 10 hours, and we're coming in as products of influence of Western Civ in 2014. We are now walking into a building across from the Holy of Holies that's teaching like real pure Torah, that's thousands of years old, And we're here to hear what Torah says. We are suspending for a second, as trying to be as intellectually honest as possible, to suspend our worldview, to see if we can see the Torah worldview. And then later, it would be like if you're a chef, so you got like a nice pot brewing of your upbringing and all your values, yeah? And then and then what you're doing, that's now on the back burner. A low simmer, a nice soup stock. On the front burner, though, you're cooking up a nice, wok. You got a nice wok full of Judaism, yeah? And you got that burner, it's sealed off. You're not like going on a Facebook and disappearing from this class. Second you go out there, you're in Facebook in some other world of some other time zone with some other ideas that are all back to where you were. So, no, we're talking about, you guys ever heard of a pressure cooker? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's sealed on the top. It's got to cool down before you can open it and put in all your veggies from the wok. Yeah, it's sealed. You're not on Facebook every second you walk out of this room and like complete with your chicken with your head cut off, and the information you get here goes right out when you get your head pumped full of whatever you're normally getting it pumped full of, and you front burner just cooking up that wok of Judaism, thousands of year old Judaism. And then afterwards, when you got the wok all cooked up, you got a good idea of what Judaism says. Then you look back there, you let it cool off a little, open up the pot, and you take that wok, and you know what you do? You dump it in there. You dump it in there, and you see what happens. And it might be that it gonna taste bad, yeah? It might be it's gonna be yucky. And you say, you know what? My life is full of conflict, and something's gotta give. So either the ancient traditions of my people are gonna give, or my newer traditions based on Westernism will have to give. And something's gotta give, because this is not a Western tradition. Judaism's not Western. So something's got to give, and then you make your decisions on what gives. And then it comes into the whole subject of conscience, because if you really approach Judaism intellectually here and really let it be what it is without having to water it down to somehow be on your level, you missed yesterday's discussion, Jordan. We were talking about how Judaism is always this bar. No one's ever reaching. Even Moses didn't keep Judaism all the way. Like he blew it on several things. Okay, so Judaism's a bar you're like always trying to reach. Yeah, you stretch for it. Yeah, and what happens is in Western civilization, morality is whatever you happen to be doing at the time. That's what's right or wrong. You look at the behavior and now you say that's right or wrong. Literally, go to any university, go to any media or commentary of of the world today. Whatever your current behavior is the new morality. Whatever everyone does is now what's right or wrong. So what they've done is they've taken the bar and they just put it to our current behavior, which removes the stretch. So now I'm not stretching for anything anymore.
So your Jewish is tangible, even though you're commanded by God with your Jewish. Like God knows what your Jewish is, but you're able to redefine what God told you, so go against what He commanded.
Not redefine what your Jewish contribution is. It's just that you may shift it into a different way. Like, for example,
Would you say that maybe occupation and purpose are very different? So, for example, like someone who they feel like their purpose is to rally LGBT or to be a pork salesman, it's like, well, there are definitely skills in those occupations that are maybe related to purpose, and then the kind of casing of that purpose will change. So someone could take those skills and put it to another occupation that would be more in line.
This is much more, well said. What's your name? Marissa? So Marissa is bringing a really nice, what we're talking about is your special purpose. What it really is it's not the cause necessarily. It's more the practical skills that you've been given to champion a cause. So if you've been given practical skills that are unique to you, you're a great networker, or you're a great writer, or you're a great people person, or you're really good at structuring things, or you're really good like an organizer, or you're are a particularly sensitive listener, or you're a very creative brainstormer, or any of these things that's unique to you. So you can adapt, you can champion any cause with those things. You understand? So it's not so much as the cause itself, it's more the adaptable or practical skills. But I would add that there are causes that are universal, and I chose one of those, and that's interpersonal connection. So I could take that same group that you mentioned, which I'm afraid I'll blow the initials. I know it's started with L, but I can take those same initials, yeah? And I could take, I could probably get those people and the most hardcore ultra-Orthodox Mea Sharim Hasidim to somehow have this amazing summit together. I'd be able to do that. Because you can also have a cause that's a universal, i.e., mine is interpersonal connection. Another might be of a universal would be education. Education, people should be informed in this world. Another one might be justice. Justice, that's universal. That you want to promote justice in this world. Another one might be something like hunger, dealing with international hunger, things like that, or things that have to do with health aid for people who are ailing. There's universals. So there are definitely universals, and then there's some that are a little more acute that might be in contradiction with Judaism. The universals aren't going to be contradiction with anything. You may be someone who's just so amazing at setting up field hospitals. So that's going to work anywhere you go. Whereas if you choose a cause that's more of an acute type cause rather than an obtuse general cause, than a cause that's more acute. Now, if that conflicted with Torah and someone, hey, I think this Torah stuff's real, then they'd have to make that shift and just take the skill sets and move them over to another applicable field. Now, I'd like to tie this down. I'd like to nail this down or ground what we've been discussing in Torah in a very, very broad term. And how we're going to do that, we're going to look at the three greatest moments in history. One of them still hasn't happened. But the three greatest moments in human history begins here, and it ends here. We haven't gotten there yet. And then right around here, there was a great moment. Right here was a great moment. Okay? And these greatest times in all of human history are, number one, creation itself. Two ends?
Yeah.
Beginning. Then you have revelation, and then you have the ending, or completion, if you will. Okay? So you have a beginning, you have an end. I don't know if you guys know about this, but Judaism teaches a tradition that there is an end. Okay?
So corresponds with science as of today.
Okay? And
I mean, as of present.
yeah, I have a feeling our timeline is a little different. Not today. So, all right, so there's beginning. That's creation. Now, this is probably most likely Big Bang and Genesis, meaning Big Bang and Genesis are totally cool with each other. They work perfectly together. So this is the beginning of creation. Then there was a revelation experience. It was called Mount Sinai. Sinai experience. You guys can investigate that on your own if that's valid or not, if that really happened or not, if there was. Okay, but obviously we hold it to be self-evident, an incontrovertible fact, not an incontrovertible faith. We hold it to be an incontrovertible fact. Once you leave Esha Torah, then it will be called an incontrovertible faith, because no one's ever looked into it. People are just observing because their parents were, and their grandparents were, and their great-grandparents were. But Esha Torah is an institution that's built out of people who showed up here, not necessarily believing in God and not necessarily believing in Torah, and put it to task and said, you know what? This is definitely beyond a doubt real. Okay? So that's revelation. Now, you might say, well, what do you mean? A lot of people had a revelation from God. I mean, like, what's unique about that? And the answer is that what's unique about the Sinai revelation is that it's a national revelation. And a national revelation makes a difference, whereas individual revelation is basically irrelevant. It's basically irrelevant. Like imagine, I don't know, Dylan, you mind if I use you for an example? Imagine Dylan like, I don't know, he's down at the Western Wall and he's like, God, if you exist, just give me a sign, and all of a sudden like the clouds open up and then there's this like whirlwind, like tornado thing over him with light shooting down it. And everyone's like, whoa, and all these rabbis who they're only down there to wait for Mashiach. So they're like, I think this is it. Get on their cell phones. We think we got him. Yeah, but meanwhile, there's also the police are down there to wait for him too, because if they find him, they gotta snuff him out. Because if we get Mashiach, then we rebuild the temple, and then World War III. It's not politically correct to, rebuild the temple over where that big gold dome is. Okay, you're not supposed to pop the pimple. It's not good. So, anyway, Anyway, but meanwhile, you're just like, like that. So the police and the Kabbalists all come to grab him at once. And they all collide, and he slides out the bottom and runs back up to class. He walks in the back door, all of our hair stands up. What is that? Mr. Electric walks in the room, and we all turn around. He's like, I'm a prophet. And we're like, oh no. And he's like, yes. And we're like, what did God say? And he says, God said, well, one of the things he said is that everyone should give 10% of their income to me. Now, what are we all going to say to Dylan? That's cute. They'll say exactly what your parents are going to say when you get back to wherever you're from, all excited about Jerusalem. They'll say, that's nice for you. That's what people like to say. It's the worst. Have you ever heard it? Yes. That's nice for you. Let's change subjects. So, don't say it as much as like, Aunt Marge. Oh, that's so nice for you. You're like, Aunt Marge, it's for you too, okay? So anyway, what would we say to Dylan? We'd say if God wanted 10% of our income, who should he have come to? To us, not to you. You understand? And that's the beauty of national revelation. I mean, individual revelation's cool as long as they're not asking anything of you. Then, okay, y'all believe that, why not? That's what you think you heard, great. Fabulous. But it shouldn't affect me. The second it affects you, at that point, it better be a direct conversation with God, especially when it's 613 commandments, which breaks into 55,000 laws, many of which are quite expensive, as we've discussed the cosmic vegetation on another day. Yeah, Dylan.
Can't I ask the question, why isn't he communicating to all of us, like today and every generation after Mount Sinai? Because, I understand that, sure, we can look at all the evidence that supports how the national revelation is so unique and how it can't be disputed.
Yeah.
But at the end, I'm still taking your word that all of my ancestors all have heard this all at the same time.
Right. That's why it's only one aspect of what we study about Sinai. When you're proving Mount Sinai, there's only one aspect. It's one aspect. If you had a pie chart of proofs of Sinai, that's just a slice. Okay. You're right. You're absolutely right. I agree with you. Dylan, God did set up to reveal to all of us always, but always through what we're currently dealing with in life. Like we're always getting taught. Think about it, your whole life is just one big lesson.
Sure, okay.
So you can either point to the lesson around you, or you could look up at God and say, I got it, thank you. Okay, God wants us all to grow in life and to become amazing people. And he is talking to all of us all the time, just like we learn in Megillat Esther, which is the book of Esther, which doesn't have God's name in it at all. And it's just one big God's name. Just everything here is like that. The revelation here was only because there was 2,000 2,448 years here, 2,448 years was kind of a 2.5 millennia disappointment on human beings recognizing that God's talking through the creation. People just didn't get that. People were just totally matrix locked in, to the world. So God said, okay, let's try plan B. This whole thing from here on is plan B. Okay? And this is like coming into the land of Israel, and then we blew the temple period, so then there's plan C, is this long exile. And D is the redemption. So we're now midway through redemption. We're very close to the end of days. Yeah.
God never changes his plan, right? I mean, it's us that.
No, but we have free will. So you're bringing up a can of worms now of free will, meaning
Sorry.
God. No, it's okay, but just on the class plan, it's not going to go so well. But at any point along the line here, we could have just gotten that there's God. I have many friends. They've never heard of Torah. They never, not Jewish, but they're just totally into God, and they're like, okay, they live, kind of a relativist morality, but not so relativist. And they're like really in with God. And I don't believe I have a closer connection to God than they do. And they're not Jewish even. And we could have gotten it. And had we gotten it, we wouldn't have necessarily needed this. And we could have just lived happily ever after with the creator of the universe. So we have free will. Plan B isn't necessarily a plan that had to take place.
Didn't have to.
No, it was just, God gave us free will. So we chose out. So God said, okay, we got a whole planet of people choosing out. I could destroy it. Oh, I can't destroy it. I already promised no, I wouldn't. So I can't destroy it. So what do? Plan B. We'll create, one nation. Maybe I was biting off more than I could chew, trying to relate to all of humanity. Relating to all of humanity just doesn't seem to go. So I'll just freak out one nation. I'm just going to blow their minds. I'm going to give them transgenerational slavery. And they won't even be a nation. They're going to be born in another nation. So they won't be nationalistic like other nations that are all about, Mother Russia or, these types of things. They won't be nationalistic because they will have been born amongst another nation. Yeah, Egypt. Because that was just Jacob's family that went to Egypt. It wasn't a nation. But we were born as a nation in another nation. Never happened in the history of the planet, such a thing. And so we're a nation within a nation. Transgenerational slavery, meaning learn how to serve. So no matter what happens along the line, you'll still serve God. And a lot's happened, and you see, here we are, still serving God. Transgenerational slavery. And we're going to freak them out big time with a massive Sinai national revelation. I mean, you don't have to be some high-level prophet. You can be like, the lowest handmaid, and you're still going to get this full 3D, THX surround sound, Omnimax, freak out blast from God. And that blast from God changed us forever. And that's why you'll notice with Jews, no matter how far along the timeline you meet them, they always have one of the 3Ds, okay? 3Ds. 3Ds are devoted, and those who are raised secular like me are usually distracted, yeah? And then those who aren't so good at distracting themselves are usually depressed. Okay, the 3Ds, devoted, distracted, and depressed. And Jews are always somewhere along the line here. The observant ones are usually devoted. Again, what are we talking about? We're talking about you just had this major download. It is collective unconscious reality inside the heart of every Jew. It's inside of all of us. And you'll see, no matter how secular a Jew is, they're either going to be distracted or depressed. Okay? The distracted ones will create, they'll be the tops in their fields, constantly distracting the Sinai voice with greater breakthroughs and greater breakthroughs. Meaning if you forget the Jews living in all the other nations, and you just let the Jews be a nation, our Nobel Prizes go down like a giant column. You can tape down your scroll button on your computer. And it just, all the other nations kind of drop off, and the Jews, if you call the Jews, meaning take every Jew out of New York who got one, every Russian Jew, and all those Jews out of England, and every Jew out of Europe, and you just make a line called the Jews. So it's this giant line that just keeps going and going and going while the rest of the world just disappeared. And not only that, but even Israel in our modern times, Israel is not tied, it's one behind Switzerland. For some reason, Switzerland, I think it was. has more Nobel Prizes than Israel. But Israel's second in the world for Nobel Prize. I don't know how that could possibly be. But even Israel has that. But when you extract all the Jews, we just go, wow, all the way down. That's the distracted people. It's also the Lehman Brothers and all the other giant economic finance, institutions. Distracted.
What are they distracted from?
I was distracted. I surfed 6 to 8 hours a day. It was extreme the amount I would surf. And I surfed all around the world, and I couldn't get enough. And finally, I got enough. I was 23 years old, living in Santa Barbara, UCSB, UCAN study bus. I was studying at UCSB, and it finally happened that I hit the bottom D. Because I was like, I just can't distract myself anymore. I want to know if there's something real. I think what knocked me out was I always believed I'd find something real, and nothing happened. Nothing turned up. That was really real. And so all the religions were faith-based, and they all had blood on their hands, and none of that could be real. Judaism, I shut the book on Judaism because I was just raised in a Judaism that was basically ridiculous. I mean, it was certainly not an option. And I didn't know about observant Jews. I never met an observant Jew, so I didn't know what that was. And so I never knew it even existed. So I just kind of shut the book on Judaism. And then, but I think what happened was in university, I said, you know what, I'll check out the academic world. And I studied graduate level philosophy. And I got to the top level graduate level philosophy, and that's called deconstructionism. And deconstruction, you basically deconstruct the meaning of life. Like nothing means anything anymore. You can deconstruct everything. So you can do who wrote Moby Dick? That was Herman Melville. Yeah. So you can do a liberal pygmy reading of Herman Melville's Moby Dick. From that perspective, who cares what Herman Melville meant when he wrote that book? Because that's how extreme they get. Nothing means anything. Even an author of his own book, who cares what he meant? You read it the way you want to read it. And you actually get assignments where you have to read a book and then give it over, write a whole paper on what it's about from some crazy perspective. And that's just as true, basically. So when I came out of the meaningless department of university, I guess I lost hope and I couldn't distract myself with surfing anymore. And at that point I was like, okay, I'm stuck. And I had this terabyte hard drive, because I'm a Jew. I'm from Sinai. So we're all from Sinai. So we have this terabyte hard drive of running memory, and I want to run those kinds of programs, but the only software I had was McDonald's and MTV. Am I dating myself? Do they still have McDonald's? Yeah. They still have MTV? Really? There's still MTV? So that was my software, and it was very disappointing because I had this massive hard drive that only wants something big and real and filled with wisdom. And that was Torah, and then I went devoted. So I've lived all 3Ds. I distracted myself for 12 years. Then I got depressed when I realized, oh my gosh, there's nothing meaningful. And then on a fluke trip to Israel, because it was just a miracle happened, that I wound up here. It was an absolute freak trip. I would never, ever have come here. I was such a surf snob. I would never come to the Mediterranean. And I'll tell you, my best waves of the year have been here. This particular year, my best surfing anywhere I've been was in Ashdod. This year, 2 different occasions. It was just epic waves. But I'll just share with you one amazing story. You probably heard it before, some of you, but in university, we used to do these all-night parties that, were pretty, let's just say they were pretty out there. And people were up all night long, and the living room was just people dancing, with music playing and stuff. And one of the bedrooms became like a gathering of people who were just talking. And talking and talking and talking, and then a couple other people come in. Sometimes they'd come in and go what are you guys talking about? And shut the door and go back and dance. And someone else would go, what are you guys talking about? We were talking about this. And then they're like, oh wow, I always thought about that. Hey, that connects to this. And they're like, whoa. And they're all freaking out about these connections, Anyway, 6 in the morning, people are still dancing out there. And this room was like kind of gotten packed with people until some girl says to the lady that she's talking to, the girl she's talking to, she says, "Oh my gosh, I got to go down to LA for a bat mitzvah. I totally forgot." And the girl's like, "You're Jewish?" And she like was afraid, like maybe she doesn't like Jews. So she's like, "Yeah." And she's like, "Me too." And the people next to them are like, "You two are Jewish?" And they're like, "Yeah, we're also Jewish." And then it just went around the room. They were like, then the group was walking through the room. Now I was in a corner on like a little couch thing talking to some dude. We were like blowing our minds. Yeah, blowing our minds. And I had hair just like Sam's, only blonde. Yeah, I had long blonde bleached hair from all the surfing. And they finally, I just didn't look Jewish, you know. I looked very Anglo, you know, and you know, surfed out Scandinavian maybe. And they finally come to us and like, "Excuse us guys, but you're not Jewish, are you?" And we both look up and we're like, "Yeah." And I looked at the guy, I'm like, "You're Jewish?" He's like, "You're Jewish?" I'm like, "I'm Jewish. What can I say? I'm Jewish." The whole room was Jewish. So then the whole room said, "Is there something going on here? You know, like someone playing a trick on us?" Like, so the whole group went out to the living room and started asking people if they're Jewish. There was not one Jew in the living room. The actual party segregated itself. Now that was our freshman year. I followed this. I was in university for 5 years. Every time we were in these like mind-expanding all-night party experiences, it happened every time. The Jews always segregated themselves and went back to the discussion. And these conversations are what our nation is. We are called, I've coined it, we are the nation of the conversation. And think about it. Have you ever had one of those all-night talks with someone you met and never even known before? And you just had this talk about like the nature of life and reality. You know what I'm talking about? You get them like once in a while. You get this amazing talk and you feel so connected. The sun rises and you're just like, wow, you know, we're gonna be friends forever. Of course, you never talk to the person again, but somehow you're like soulmates forever. You know, you could catch up right where you left off with that person. I remember I had my first conversation like that. I remember telling my mom because I didn't take the exam the next day because I wasn't studying. So I told my mom, and she's like, "Oh, that's okay, honey. You'll retake the exam. Those conversations are what life's all about." My mom raised me totally atheist. You know, this is what life's all about because she's a Jew and she's from the conversation. And so, anyway, in university we had these conversations. I craved those conversations, and we had lots of them. And finally, I come to Eretz Israel. I come to Israel on this fluke trip, and I realized it was a Jerusalem Fellowships trip. The whole thing was a miracle how I wound up on it because I was raised in this very fancy area of West LA, and the last thing I needed was a scholarship plane ticket. And the last place I'd come would be here. But just that year, my father's business went bankrupt, and he didn't have the money to send me on my graduation trip, which was this endless surf safari. So he didn't have the money to send me, and I got the scholarship. And the rest of history, I never left. Like I was.
You haven't left since then?
I mean, I teach in other countries and stuff, but since then I've been here. Yeah, I've gone on trips to teach. Yeah, I do travel, but I like to be here. This is my home base. Ain't that right, daughter? That right. So anyway, long story short, is it's just this experience. So I get to Israel, and I'm hearing the rabbis speak, and they're like putting together stuff that was totally missing parts of puzzles from all the conversations. You know those conversations. So it was all the missing parts of the puzzles, plus a backlog of 12 years of questions, including, is there anything meaningful, or is it really that what's the opposite of objective? That subjective, like meaning subjective. Morality is subjective. And oh my gosh, I had a backlog of questions that were finally getting answered. No faith involved, none of this blind faith business like the other religions I had met up with. They actually wanted me to use my brain, you know, which I always thought if God gave me a brain, it's to use it. It's not to suspend logic so that I can believe in him. Like I should be able to use the brain to believe in him. Long story short, which I keep saying, is that I was out in the square, And then I went in town and got a beer. And then I came back to the square, and I realized everywhere I go is the conversation. When I was in town getting the beer, that's all we spoke about the entire time, was the conversation. And we were all going over what we learned that day, which was even deepening the conversation. Came back to the square, it was about the conversation. Now, this is why we're in so much pain, us guys who came in then, are so much pain with the smartphones. Because we see people aren't necessarily really having the conversation once they leave the classroom. But there used to be, the only way you could reach, there were no cell phones. Forget smart, there were no cell phones. They didn't exist. So the only way you would ever touch anyone outside of this world of Torah would be calling your parents once every 10 days. You go to the payphone and with a bunch of coins and put in a bunch of coins and just, every time you heard the little ding, ding, you put in another coin. These little slugs with a hole in the middle. Yeah, how often are you going to do that? There was no such thing as email. There was no such thing as any types of networking besides phone calls and fax machines and letters. That was it. So, wow, what an experience that used to be. And the impact Torah had when you actually got to let it simmer. But what I realized ultimately is that we are the nation of the conversation. That's who our nation is. We are the nation of the conversation. And the part that blew my mind the most was when I found out that when you get married, you actually get subsidies to keep learning Torah so that you don't stop learning Torah. At least at the beginning years of your marriage, you can actually keep learning Torah. When I found out that you actually turn into, from someone paying tuition to someone receiving money to learn the conversation, because there's wealthy business people out there in the observant world that are willing to put their money where their mouth is and send money to Israel that people could study Torah even after they're married to cover their bills so that they can keep learning. Oh, that was like, oh, I'm here. That's it. We are the nation of the conversation. We put our money where our mouth is. Yeah, we got the donors building buildings like this just so the conversation keeps going no matter what. We never stop the conversation. And there's no end to the conversation. It just keeps going and going and going. And it's so beautiful to be part of that nation and to carry on the conversation, because your part of the conversation never existed in the Torah world till you come on the scene. Each one of us has a part of the conversation to share, because Torah Chaya, once Torah goes into you, what comes out of you, or Marissa or anyone, Jordan, all you guys, when Torah goes into you and it comes out of you at a Shabbos table or something, you share a little Torah, you may say a Torah that never hit the world before. And so the world's waiting for your Torah. You have a Torah to share. You got to first put in a lot of Torah, and then you can let out a lot of Torah. Yeah. But the last thing I wanted to share with you guys was just since all my kids came in, was because I was such I was very much of a environmentalist and a universalist, and certainly a moral relativist. But one of the things was I never felt like having children would be responsible with the depleting resources and the expanding populations. And meanwhile, this is actually I got quite a few kids here. We're only missing three. We're only missing 3 of them right now, and so. It was only when I discovered the nation of the conversation did I realize that we are a people that conversation leads you to God. And once you're led to God, so now you have a voice that says there is real rights and wrongs in this world, and that the world could actually just totally go down the toilet without us. So you got to have as many kids as you can, and you have to make each kid an amazing answer to the planet so that the planet can exist. Meaning our planet needs us deeply and badly. And so when I visit LA with all the kids, so there's like a whole lineup of kids coming by, like ducklings, and all my environmentalist friends are like, and they're like, Glaser, you knew better than all of us, overpopulation, lack of resources, like, what are you doing? And I say, when you're bringing more of the problem, I understand. But when you're bringing the solution, you should bring as many as you can. And each one of these kids of mine are little solutions They're all little solutions, and that's how we train them. That's how we raise them. I call their teachers when they begin the year. I'll tell their teachers, listen, I know you got like 25, 30 kids in your class, and I know you got to treat them all equally, and you got to, everyone's precious and everyone's important. But I just want you to know that whenever attention you give towards a Glaser kid, that it will go on and on and on, because we are not raising children, we are raising leaders. Tell that to each teacher. And the teachers tell me later in the year, they say, the parent-teacher conferences, they're like, I noticed that your kids are actually leaders. Every kid I've had a lot of kids through their classes, every time a Glaser kid comes along, it's not just another kid, it is a leader. And it's so worth pumping a lot of info into that kid and a lot of goodness into that kid, because that kid's going to pass it forward. So I was telling, why am I sharing this? Not about Mike, I'm sharing it about your kids to come, that they should be also tremendous solutions. They should be a healing balm for a planet in peril. They should be kids that bring goodness and solution to the world's problems. And that's why we have kids. And only then did I decide to have them. And it's really just last thing I wanted to share is that the beginning, the revelation, and the end is your life, because your life began, and your life will end. There is an end to your life. I bless you all to live long lives, but it began and it ends. The question is, when is your revelation? And what do I mean by revelation? Revelation 1 is, when do you deal with your Jewishness? Like, when's your revelation? At what point in your life is a realization that, wow, I'm a Jew, and that probably means something for my day-to-day activities to inform my life? And 2 is, that's Jewish. The other one is Jewish, is when you crystallize what you're doing on the planet. What are your special skill sets that you can apply? Whether they're innate, meaning you were born with them, or whether they are learned, what are the special skill sets you can apply to this planet to make that difference, so that when you get upstairs at the end, that you actually come up with fistfuls of mitzvahs on one hand and fistfuls of having made a difference to this planet in the other hand. Thank you very much.